Joe, you speak so highly of all the young players involved in the recording of your masterpiece, Lush Life. I sense their dedication and contributions were an inspiration to you throughout the 3 days you recorded in September.
Right, yeah. I mean, these youngsters they had an inordinate a sense of what Duke Ellington and Strayhorn, when I say Duke, I mean Strayhorn, but I just like to mention Strayhorn because the album that Lush Life was about Strayhorn's contribution to the Duke Ellington scene. And there was one guy on there, bass player Chris McBride, who just turned 19 years old. Mm-hmm. And the drummer was 20 at that time, Greg Hutchinson, and the piano player was 21, Stephen Scott. But then Winton, who was 30 at the time we did the session, he was 30, so I guess he's nearing 31 now. We can't quite refer to him as a youngster anymore. No. Well, they did have an uncanny grasp on what Duke and Strayhorn, what their music was and is about, and they were able to bring their understanding, their interpretive skills to the understanding of the Strayhorn legacy to this session in such a way that it just overwhelmed me, mm-hmm. And Winton is somewhat of an Ellington scholar, but then Lush Life is about Strayhorn, and when you say Strayhorn, you're talking about Ellington, and when you say Ellington, you're talking about Strayhorn, so it's just a little bit difficult to separate the two, But it was great to be a part of that and to see that and to know that that there are some youngsters around who are really deeply serious about this mm-hmm. music and carrying on the tradition as well as being involved in inventing new things as the younger generation should be about. I mean, they just shouldn't just accept tradition and let it go at that. Otherwise, nothing new would ever happen, right? Mm-hmm. So it was really pleasing to be in the company of youth with that kind of skill and sophistication. Just really made whatever it is that I'm about all of this time just more meaningful as it was brought to bear on putting this session together.
Now, how did you come to decision on players? Were they suggested to you by the label?
Yes.
Because these are players already on the label, right?
No, Chris McBride, sorry, not Chris, Stephen Scott, the piano player, he had, my introduction to the label was through playing on 2 or 3 tracks of Stephen Scott's record. Being introduced to the label through being on Stephen Scott's record brought me in contact with Chris McBride, the bass player. And we went down to a club in New York called, not Sweet Basil, Bradley's. And Chris was there with Gary Bartz and George Cables, and also the trumpet player who played on Stephen Scott's record, Roy Hargrove. But I had met Roy Hargrove about 2 or 3 years earlier, but he had just taken us a leap that would have spanned Grand Canyon. I mean, in terms of his growth. I mean, which was, I couldn't get over this, I mean, when I first met him, I saw him as being moderately talented as a youngster. I've run into youngsters that were 17 years old, and I usually don't like to make comparisons because comparisons don't really, they really don't serve, any kind of importance in the sense that what we're talking about here. But when I first heard him at 17 years old, I wasn't that impressed. But I was happy for him. I just hoped that he would stay with it. And then at a certain point, I'm sure he would start to come into some things. And his talent would just, all of a sudden, just mushroom if he stayed with it. And he obviously did, because by the time I got the chance to hear him the second time, he was about 20. And that was on the Stephen Scott record. Okay, Chris was about 17 or 18 at this club called Bradley's in New York when I met him. But Chris's reputation had preceded him. Everybody was talking about this young man. Mm-hmm. just going around New York, just terrorizing New York with this uncanny ability that he had sorted out at such a young age. And for people who are my age, I mean, this is the kind of thing that I kind of grew up being used to seeing. Every now and then you'd see some 18-year-old that was just had a grasp on things that just went so far beyond his years that this became the norm after a while. Every 2 years or so when I lived in New York, somebody new would show on the scene. Some new youngster would show on the scene. One year it'd be a drummer, next year it'd be a trumpet player, next year it'd be a piano player, next year it'd be a bass player. Then there was a time for about, I guess this must have been in the maybe the 70s, maybe the middle 70s to the middle 80s, where it just, nothing much happened.
No.
I mean, there was nothing around that had any kind of stay power, nothing of any consequence that you would remember, nothing beyond just being moderately talented. And being moderately talented is just not quite good enough in this game. You know what I mean? Especially when you've had a history of seeing people that were at a young age that really had a lot of talent. So when you see players that are moderately talented, well, that just, you can't get enthused about that. But Chris's reputation just... When I met him, I was wondering what this guy was going to look like. I'm saying, boy, this guy's got to be at least 10 feet tall. You know what I mean? And he's such a cherubic guy. Real, you know, he's got these cheeks that are just very super healthy, wholesome looking kind of an individual that's got his head screwed on so right. I mean, it's just so great to see that after seeing just youth in its deteriorated state so much these days, that it's just great to see someone that's just a normal kind of a person. Mm-hmm. That's just, I mean, not normal in their talent, but normal in their attitude, normal in the way that they speak to people, and that kind of thing there. Here's a guy that's just, he's really rapped right. You know what I mean? I'm saying, and he can play too. Wow. I mean, he's going to be successful. So anyway, I met him, and then I heard him play, and I just couldn't believe what I was hearing with my ears, man. You know, what I had heard with my ears was what people had been telling me about. But then at my age, I've heard people say things about musicians, people in different kinds of disciplines, and their enthusiasm about these people goes beyond the ability of the person that they're referring to. I mean, they're more. I mean, in other words, they're being distorted. You're not really getting a fair picture of what it is. I mean, what you're getting oftentimes is the energy of a person that may have something to gain one way or another in talking about an individual. For example, like they might be trying to describe to me a new drummer that's on the scene. Oh, wow, this guy is a combination of Elvin Jones, Tony Williams, Max Roach, Art Blakey, all together. And then when I hear them with my own ears, I'm saying, wait a minute. what are you talking about? So, but all this stuff that I'd heard about Chris just unfolded right in front of my ears when I got a chance to hear him. And to know that he was going to be involved in a project that I was going to be involved in, and we were going to be sidemen together there, was just great. And then at that time, when we did the Stephen Scott record, I didn't know who was going to be on the Lush Life record, because this was in March. We didn't do the Lush Life thing until September. So we had made a choice of the musicians probably somewhere like around August, somewhere around in there. But me not living in New York, a lot of these younger players I didn't know, because I live in California. Yeah. So, I mean, to answer your question, these players were suggested by the company and the producer because I didn't know who the drummer was. I'd never laid eyes on him before until we got together in a rehearsal situation to run the music down. And I didn't know who Stephen Scott was either. And but I had heard of Chris McBride all the way out into California even before I met him. That's how that just gives you, it illustrates the magnitude of his talent. I mean, and to know that he's worth every one of the words that the compliments that he's received. You know, unbeknownst to him. Mm-hmm. I mean, these are people telling me about this bass player. He didn't know that. You know what I mean? But he certainly lived up to all my expectations, and it was just. I mean, it couldn't.
It was a smooth session and everything.
It was.
Yeah.
I mean, it was
Rehearsals.
Absolutely without ego problems and all of that kind of stuff. These people were And it's just funny to me how somebody can be intimidated by me being in on this session. I'm not used to that, you know what I mean? Because I've been in the studio with players that I've sort of grown up with in New York and stuff like that. All of a sudden, here's people that maybe a generation or so, or maybe even a couple of generations younger than me, you know? I hadn't experienced that before, you know? And these people come up with so much respect. And it's just
quite amazing.
Really, man.
These
people are banging their heads on the floor. Mr. Henderson this, Mr. Henderson that. Blah, blah, blah. And they started to make me feel like I was some sort of an angel walking around that studio for a while. And an angel, I'm not. You know what I mean? I mean, an angel I might try to be, but, you know, we try to give our best shots. Oftentimes we don't make it, but we still pick up the dice and roll them. You know what I mean? And that kind of thing. But it was just great to see that. And even beyond that, it was great to experience that respect and love coming from these young players. But it was also equally as rewarding for me to hear them demonstrate their talent as well as they did.